Oh, okay, I'm ready. Sorry, I had to get out of the sun, get off the beach here, start the podcast. You know, because such a gorgeous day. All right, hey, I'm just kidding around. Hey, guys, it's a beautiful day. It is, what day is it? See, I told you, I'm at the beach.
It's Wednesday. 7th? It's a June 6th.
6th?
I think so. Hold on, let me check.
I like to be ahead of myself. Let's pretend it's the 7th.
Why do you want to rush life, man? You're on the beach already.
June 6th, Wednesday, is beautiful Flint, 70 degrees outside, absolutely gorgeous, and summertime is here. I know I'm a little early, but, I mean, go outside, for God's sakes. It's beautiful out there. Summertime's here. G3C in the house. How's everybody doing today? This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Let's get it on. This is the All Points TV coming to you live. We got John behind the camera making it happen. Thank you for being here inside.
Yeah, but I've been outside most of the day on and off. So
glad to hear it.
I love it, man.
Glad to hear it. It's a beautiful day here in Michigan. I'm going to share with you information about marijuana, let you know what's been happening down at the Genesee County Compassion Club, get you up to date on all cannabis news across the country. Let's get it on. All right, we got our first announcements. You know, announcements are always first. You ever notice that? I mean, everywhere you go, announcements are always first.
After it's news.
Is that so you can just, listen to those, get up, and then leave?
Right.
Kind of like church.
Yeah, we don't want to.
I got the announcements. I'm out.
Yeah, it's like church, so they do put it on there so those people who are just like there to get those announcements, we want to hear about the pop.
I'm going to hit you first now before you fall asleep.
But later on, they usually pass the plate. So I think they should put those two together so you can hear the announcements and have to listen to them while they're passing the plate.
Oh, maybe some churches do.
Maybe I'll do that if I start my own church.
There you go. Yeah. Never too late. You can get yourself ordained as a dude. Go to dudism.
What is that? Great Bogowski or
Big Lebowski?
Lebowski, not Bubowski.
I highly recommend that. Everyone should be a dude.
I know a lot of people who have really tried that.
Yeah, it's legit.
Yeah.
It's
a different religion, right?
Yeah. All right. We got some cool stuff coming up at the G. I want to tell you guys, remind you guys about. We have our soup kitchen coming up. It has been changed to Tuesdays, and I believe it's next week. So if you guys could help us out, we appreciate it over at the North End Soup Kitchen. Tuesday, we are serving the lunch meal, and I think last time we had like over 120 people show up. So that's phenomenal. Definitely well-utilized service. Glad to be a part of it, and we definitely could use your help. So soup kitchen. Got some other stuff coming up here. Something actually it's pretty special, and I'm excited about this for real. All right, we got John Turbeek coming to the club on the 15th, along with Eric Gunnels, who's running for state rep. Now, for those of you who don't know, John Turbeek is the attorney from Wyoming, Michigan, who sued his township, sued his city, sued the state, went to the Supreme Court of Michigan, and won. All right? And what his court case was all about was protecting your individual rights under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. So, specifically, what his case said was your local ordinances, city, township, whatever, do not preempt the freedoms given to you, the rights given to you in the Michigan's medical marijuana law. And also, federal law does not supersede this law either. So you can go read the court case for yourself if you want to look it up. That's basically the gist of it. That was handed down from our Supreme Court right here in Michigan, and that was as a decision, that was a result of a decision by this man, John Turbeek. So this guy's like a hero because if you look at what he did, he's an attorney from the Wyoming area, and his local city, they went ahead and they passed an ordinance that violated patients' and caregivers' rights. It was going to prevent them from being able to use the medical marijuana law in their town. And he stood up in his community and he said, that's not right, and I'm going to fight you. And he did. He fought it all the way on his own dime for you and I. Understand, this man was not being arrested. Nobody was coming to his house and trying to enforce this on him. He just took up the ball, took up the torch, if you will, and lit that mother up. You know what I'm saying? He went to the Supreme Court and got it done. And how many people can say out there that you sued the state and won? Not very many. This guy did it, and because of what he did, he helped protect the freedoms that are given to you in your Michigan medical marijuana law. Should they attempt to supersede them with a city ordinance or something along those lines? Detroit, are you listening? At any rate, John Turbeek's going to be at the club on Friday, June 15th in the evening. We're talking like 4 to 7 p.m. He's going to be hanging out. and just basically embracing all that the G3C is. He can't wait to come. And to him, it's like, from what I've been told, he's just super excited about it. I know we're super excited about having him. And I hope you guys can join us on that. That is June 15th. Again, it's a Friday. Also, as you've seen him on the podcast here, you know, he's been a member for a long time. Eric Gunnels, current trustee of Thetford Township, running for state representative, will also be there with Mr. John Terbeek on Friday, June 15th. And we ask if you could come on out, have a good time, get to meet the myth, the legend, Mr. Terbeek, and help support Mr. Gunnels if you can. It's going to be a fun event. It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. And it's going to be on the 15th, Friday. So be there, be square. Next thing that's coming up, 710. I know all of you guys don't really need a reminder about 710. You probably will remind yourself throughout the day, if you know what I'm talking about. And but at any rate, July 10th, we're going to celebrate 710. And we're going to do it big, we're going to do it awesome, and we're doing it at the club. So mark your calendars if you haven't already, 710. It is a Tuesday, so I know you got nothing else going on, all right? Just come on out and have a good time. I'm thinking like dunk tank, pie in the face. I don't know. It's going to be crazy. There's going to be so many activities. 710. All right, let's move on. That's what the events are. We're done with the events. We're done with the announcements. You can now go to sleep and exit the building. Just kidding. Let's get on with the news. Got some stuff we want to talk about, medical marijuana stuff. The first thing I think that is relevant to what we've been covering here on the show, of course, we've been talking a lot about the Michigan Medical Marijuana Federal or Facilities Licensing Act. Federal, it's not federal. Facilities Licensing Act. Everybody probably is well aware that there was a deadline of June 15th. Same date that our party is, if you didn't get that correlation. But at any rate, LARA issued their own memo just last week stating that they are not following through with their original deadline of June 15th. And now centers that are applying to the MMFLA will have until September 15th that they can remain open and also in compliance and still apply for their license. So that was the big news coming from LARA. You know, September 15th, June 15th, April 15th, whatever. It doesn't matter what the 15th is, okay? I don't give a damn. Patients and caregivers had their law passed in 2008, and this thing doesn't even freaking matter. So if you're a patient and you're providing your own medication, who gives a flying foo about when the 15th is or what 15th is or what, you know what I'm saying? And if you're a caregiver, it doesn't make a difference either. So let the state continue to muddy the water, play the game, postpone things, whatever. It doesn't matter. We have our law. It is fully in place, has been for quite some time. We know how to make it function, and who gives a damn about what 15th it is? All right. Legalization. That's the next big thing that's been on the talking points, the news. Obviously, most of you probably know that we're going to have full legalization be on the ballot in November in Michigan for medical marijuana recreational purposes. Adults 21 and over. You can carry 2.5 ounces on your person. You can have up to 10 ounces at home. You can grow at home. There's going to be a regulatory framework set up for commercial sales. There's going to be sales tax, excise tax, you name it. You can read the proposal and get all the details for yourself. But the bottom line is that your legislature was considering tampering with this. Basically, you know, there's a group that went out, there's people that gave money, and they collected signatures to get this on the ballot. They got enough of those signatures, they got it approved, and then according to state law, the legislature has 40 days from the day that it's approved to be on the ballot to go approve it themselves. And also, they also have the ability to not only approve the measure, but amend the measure. In other words, change it to their liking, not what it originally said. They didn't do it, bottom line. So there was a lot of talk about it in the Senate. The Senate Majority Leader, Arlen Meekoff, basically was really pushing this thing hard, from at least that's what the papers were trying to portray, with the interest of, number one, being able to make their own adjustments to the law. One of the big things they said they did not like about this legalization language was home grows. In other words, they don't want people being able to produce this for themselves. They don't want to see self-sufficiency. They don't want to see people being, you know, organic and entrepreneurial and self-sufficient. They didn't want any of that. They want you to just go get on the corporate dole. And we said phooey to that. They didn't get it through. So at any rate, those things will be a part of the language. They are part of the language. And if this passes, or I should say when this passes in November, those things will be included. So at any rate, the main reason that they were looking at potentially passing this on their own and not giving you the choice to do so was so that they could make changes to it. The other big thing is if we pass this, if the voters pass this in November, it's going to take 3/4 majority in the House and in the Senate to make any changes to it in the future. So just like our medical marijuana law, that is so difficult to change for them because you have to get that super majority of 3/4, you can see how that's protected us. And it's going to do the same thing for this legalization ballot should it come through in November. So they wanted to subvert that process potentially. If they pass it, then you don't have to have supermajority to change it in the future. That's one of the things right there that they were considering. The other thing that they were considering as reasons for not letting this go to the ballot or to the voters is one of the big things they feel is that legalization supporters are mainly Democratic. And I would have to disagree with that. But the objective there was to try to keep people from showing up at the poll. You know, how twisted is that? That you have ulterior motives of politicians who would rather just have you stay at home on Voters' Day and let their cronies do what they want to do. And they kind of thought that maybe by not having this on the ballot, more people wouldn't show up to vote. Well, it is going to be on the ballot, and hopefully you do show up to vote. And hopefully you vote those suckers out. Just as importantly as you place your vote for whether or not you feel this should be legalized. I think that is a very candid picture of our politicians. You know, the fact that, number one, they feel that you're not able to make your own decisions, that somehow ballot initiatives don't really do the job. You know, they try to discredit the process. They try to discredit the voters' opinion and personal knowledge of being able to make decisions. In other words, a lot of legislators feel that you're not capable of making your own decisions about what's right or wrong or what should or shouldn't happen. And they feel that they should be able to do that for you. And I think that's sickening myself. But that's part of the motivation, part of the things that were going on, the dichotomy of the legislative body, especially in the Senate, and the reasons why they were considering taking this on rather than letting the voters vote on it in November. So at any rate, that deadline is passed. It was over Tuesday night, and we're going to the polls. So it's time that you guys got educated on the legalization ballot. I know that we have mixed feelings in the club. I've heard some people support, some people don't support. And I tell you what, you are, God love you, you're in a free country, and I want you to pick what you choose for yourself. What I also ask is that you take time to educate yourself, read the ballot language, and make your own educated decision. Do not go on what the news is telling you. Don't go on what I tell you. Don't go on what your neighbor, your friend, your caregiver, your patient. Don't go on anybody's opinion except for facts. You got to read it. It's not that long. The language here is not, it's not like it's a bill that was written by our legislature where it's 500 pages long. It's a nice, short, and sweet bill, easy to understand. Read it, educate yourself, make your decision, okay? That's the big thing. That's the biggest thing you can do, all right? I'm excited because anytime that I think the public has more input on what our policies are going to be, I think that's better. I think it's a better way to go. And I really feel like in today's day and age of technology and communication that a representative legislative body, it could potentially be out of date, if you will. I mean, we have the ability to voice our own opinions so easily now and to make those opinions known. I'm not saying that we don't need a legislative body in our government, but the large, broad spectrum of things that they cover, I think, could be narrowed down. I think they could be part-time. I don't think they need to be making quite so many laws. And I think that we are available and able as a public to educate ourselves and to make our own decisions. And I would encourage you to do that. So, all right, next thing, next area, let's move on, all right? I've got something I wanted to bring up to you, and in spite of the, you know, we got the licensing thing going on, we've got the legalization thing going on, it really seems like the marijuana industry in Michigan is growing. It's not going to stop. It's snowballing, and the snowball is getting bigger. And one of the things that tends to get passed over are the people that are still getting caught up in the court system. And we're talking about legitimate patients and caregivers that are currently fighting in court for their freedoms, fighting for their medical marijuana protections provided to them by law. And it's, in some cases, it's detesting to see what our state is continuing to pursue as far as spending our resources to prosecute people who really have no business doing so. I mean, this law was passed with the express consent by the public to protect people who need it. So if you need medical marijuana and you're using it for medicinal purposes, the idea behind this law was that you should be protected from criminal prosecution, criminal charges, fines, penalties, jail, whatever. And in some cases, that's happening. And obviously, you could say it is happening when we have cannabis fluent throughout the state now and people aren't all over in jail. But there are still quite a few people who have been caught in the crosshairs of the gray areas, if you will. And we've all talked about the gray areas. It's something that sort of this synonym that we've been using now for 10 years to describe, well, were they legal or weren't they legal? And it's unfortunate that we can't just go back to the premise of what the law was for and then apply it to these individual situations. And we don't. We have to get into details and analyze whether or not someone really had a bona fide doctor relationship, or whether or not there were stems left in the bag that were usable, or what this person was processing it for. No, we have to get into these details, pick apart their lives, and we kind of forget about the fact that this law was meant to protect sick people who are using cannabis to treat those ailments. If someone is subverting the program, if they're clearly breaking the rules and they're just trying to set up their own drug empire, I don't have a problem with shutting those folks down. That's not what this program was created for. But the folks that are attempting to utilize the program and do so for the right reasons, those folks should fully be protected. And so what I'm sort of leaning to or getting into here is a certain gray area that has not been clarified by the courts, and it is a gray area that is still catching people up and still putting them in court. And so let me explain what this is. This gray area is the time between when you cut your plant down and when it's ready to be used. So there's a time lapse in between there. So between when the plant was growing in the medium, whether that be dirt, in a pot, hydroponically, aeroponically, whatever. At the time when you cut the plant down, it's no longer a plant per se in a legal sense. So you're allowed to have 12 plants if you're a patient that doesn't have a caregiver, or obviously if you're a caregiver, you can have 12 plants for each patient. So the second that you cut the plant down, it's no longer considered a plant legally. Now it's going to be considered material. The question is when does it become usable? Who decides that it's usable? In what form is it usable? And the only type of definition that we have currently that has been well decided and well documented through court cases is if the material is still wet, it is not usable. So unless the material is dry, it is not considered usable for most of these court cases. And they're still arguing about this going on in many courts, believe me. But that is the main defining thing right now that we have as patients and caregivers, and that law enforcement has as a tool to define things as well. So moisture, wet, if these things are present, we're going to consider them to be not usable. If they're dry, we're going to consider them to be usable. Now, you and I both know as a patient and caregiver that not all material ends up being so black and white. It's not always dry. It's not always wet. And so there's a bit of a variance here, almost, if you will, a personal preference. One person may want a little more moisture in their product. One person may want a little less. So it is a gray area here that has not yet been defined, and there have been plenty of folks that have been caught up in this area. And the reason why, obviously, is because marijuana itself, the plant, when it's growing in its medium, it's 66% water, okay? The majority, just like our human bodies, actually, very similar makeup there as far as water content comparison. Cannabis itself is made up of majority is water. And when the plant is cut down, the water obviously evaporates. It disappears. And so the weight of that water also disappears. So consequently, when we cut a plant down and it's wet, we all know that it weighs more than after it's dried out and is prepared to be used. There's a lot of different things that go along in that process, such as like trimming, stem removal. You may even be making some sort of concentrate and using solvents to remove the medicinal material off from the plant. There's a lot of different things that are involved in this, and it is a tough job for law enforcement to decide, hey, is this person within their limits or are they not? And I have seen multiple cases where we have had material that is still drying. It weighs more than the 2.5 ounces the person is allotted for, but after it would have dried, presumably, it would have been less than their legal amount. But that didn't matter when they got arrested, because they were arrested or they were raided or whatever it was. The search warrant was carried out at the time when it was still drying. Maybe it had just been cut down a day before, or maybe 4 days before. Maybe it was stuck in the freezer and it was waiting to be processed into something else. So there's varied stages in here that have not yet been defined by law enforcement or court cases, and this is the gray area that I'm speaking of. So the reason I'm bringing it up today is to, number one, identify it, and to make sure that you guys are aware that this is a gray area, and it's I guess what I would consider almost, it's an unsafe zone, if you will. So if you've cut down your plant, let's say that wet, you've got something that weighs, let's say, 4 ounces. By the time that it dries out, it might weigh maybe 1.5 ounces. The thing that you need to do, number one, is keep your material that is drying and still in processing. The stuff that isn't done yet, you need to keep that separate from the stuff that is done. Okay, whatever the done is, whether it be wax, RSO, flour material, keef, whatever it is, if it's done, keep it in the done area. Okay, whether it needs to be locked up or put away, or however it is you store your medication. If it's ready to be used, you need to keep that separate. The stuff that is not ready to be used, okay, and you are ultimately the one that's going to be defining not ready, because you're the one that's processing it, whether you're the caregiver or you're the patient. But you need to make it very clear and evident to law enforcement or to anyone else that might just happen to inspect your room. Let's pretend you are going to have an inspector show up tomorrow morning and they wanted to make sure you're going to be compliant with the medical marijuana law. You want to make sure that you can easily explain and visually confirm that someone is being compliant. And the way to do that easily is keep it separate. So if you've got stuff that's still drying, or you got something that needs to be processed, don't have it mixed in with your usable material. It's going to make it a real nightmare for you should you have an encounter with law enforcement. And it makes it tough for them to do their job as well. Labeling. Labeling is a very easy thing. Is it going to be the golden ticket to freedom? Is it going to guarantee you your safety? And no, but it would definitely help. And it shows that you have you've taken on the personal responsibility of trying to be compliant. Does it guarantee you that you are compliant? No, it doesn't. But at least it shows that you're attempting to be compliant. It shows that maybe you thought you were compliant. Ignorance is no excuse, of course. But at any rate, it's important to at least make an effort and try not to commingle the two things together to where it's going to be a confusing matter if law enforcement was to be involved. So that's my tip in that particular area. I know a lot of folks have had questions about this particular thing, and I've certainly seen a number of court cases where folks have been caught up by material that was still drying, and yet, by the time it dried, they would have been within their limit, but since it wasn't dry, they were over their limit. So what are they supposed to do? The best thing I can tell you, have it separate, have it labeled, and if you were going through, let's say, a raid, or you're on the side of the road being pulled over, at that point, honesty is the best policy. You want to make sure you're clear about what you're doing, and things should add up to what you're saying. If it doesn't look like what you're saying, there's probably going to be an issue. But at any rate, that's my tip. I hope that helps you out. If nothing else, you know that you need to be cautionary when your medicine is in that stage. Okay, and that's something that you want to watch out for if you're a caregiver or a patient, just to make sure you protect yourself. That's what it's all about. All right, that's it for my tips. In the news, I do have some good news for you. Well, I don't know how good it is, but it's still exciting. Canada, our neighbor to the north, just might finally this week legalize cannabis for adult recreational purposes. The actual rollout of it might take a week or two, but it appears as of today's news, that Canada may be rolling it out just this week. I know we've talked about it on the program previously, but that is pretty good, exciting news. Canada obviously being one of the more developed nations in the world to have legalized cannabis once they complete this. And, there's only been a few other nations that have actually legalized cannabis. There's quite a few out there that have decriminalized drugs or cannabis specifically, but legalizing it is a little bit different. That means that it allows for production and sales and so on and so forth. And Canada is about to jump onto that bandwagon. So certainly I think it's going to be a precursor to the U.S. doing so. We just don't know when. So, Canada! All right, one more thing I wanted to announce on today's program. I know a lot of you guys are probably very excited about this weekend's upcoming event at the Auto City Speedway. It's the High Times Cannabis Cup, and I'm excited to see it back in our little county of Genesee. I think it's an honor to have it here, and High Times Cup this weekend. You guys go have a blast, be careful, be compliant, and have a good time. I know they're going to have some incredible musical guests out there. Quite frankly, I am floored at the level of entertainment that they're providing. They have Trick Trick from Detroit. It's a huge name. Weka Flocka. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. And Vic Mensa, along with one of our own very personal, one of our very own, Greg Joslin from Cush's My Cologne, going to be performing as well. So get out to Auto City Speedway this weekend. I think it's going on Saturday, Sunday, probably even more. Saturday, Sunday, Sunday. Smokes and chokes. But no, it's going to be awesome. So you guys get out there. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great vendors, a lot of great people mostly, and a lot of good times. So enjoy the cup, all right? When you get tired of the cup, come on back to the G. You can fill up on some tasty grub at the G, at the Growing Concern, get yourself a smoothie, and hang out with some good friends in an air-conditioned environment. I'm sure you'll be looking forward to that by the time you sweat it out at the cup. All right. That's what I got for today. I mean, other than that, what's on the news, John? We got swimsuit, or not swimsuit. That's right. There's no more swimsuits allowed. Did you hear about that?
Oh, yeah, about that, the competition. Yeah,
no swimsuits.
Yeah.
About time, man. About time.
Yeah, you got tired of looking at those half-naked girls, right?
Yeah. It's degrading.
Stop on the
I don't even know how we get away with a thing called a beauty pageant in today's day and age, especially with the whole, you can't say crap anymore to anyone,
right,
without being offensive and getting your life changed. But I mean, how do we get away with beauty pageants anyways?
But hey, some women actually benefit off of it, so.
I know, and there's still a magazine called Vanity Fair, so whatever. Okay. Hey, thanks for joining me this week, guys. I hope you get out and enjoy some of the weather. Maybe go to a beach. Michigan has a lot of them, Be a tourist in your own state. It's a beautiful thing if you can. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Be careful. Enjoy the sunshine. Take care. And come and see us at the G. See you next week, guys. Have a great one.